If you want to work out like a samurai or build mental and physical strength like a samurai, this video is for you. I am James Pieratt. I am a world record hybrid athlete, former 3-time fittest prison inmate, and actually a descendant of one of the oldest samurai clans in Japan. And today I am going to break down in detail how samurai built their physical strength, their endurance, and their mental focus. Now, those of you who use kettlebells, I have good news. The samurai liked kettlebell training. At the time, they called them, or what we now call, stone locks, which were essentially almost like a stone block that was carved with a single handle on top that would be swung, that would be juggled, thrown, lifted in pretty much identical movement patterns to how we now use kettlebells today in the gym. Now, beyond that, they also would strengthen their grip and their arms using the rice bucket exercise. Now, you may be familiar with this as old school fighters like Rocky Marciano and other guys would use this similar exercise to build strength in their hands, but it essentially consisted of just taking a bucket, filling it halfway or so up with rice, putting your hand in there, squeezing and grinding. Now, the samurai put their own little spin on this. So once they had built up strength through massaging the rice, they would switch that rice out for sand, get that sand in there and really grind and build that strength. And once their hands had adapted to that, they would move on to pebbles. And same thing, be grinding and squeezing. And by this point, it's toughening the tissues in their hands and fingertips as well. And this is one way that they built insane grip strength for wielding the katana with both hands. Additionally, they did the basic simple calisthenics exercises that pretty much every warrior and throughout history has done at some point, and modern military soldiers and Navy SEALs included. That's your push-ups, your pull-ups, your air squats, all of that sort of stuff. They were also pretty big on swimming, which could prove very practical in battle, but also was just really great for building all-around cardio in a zero-impact environment. Now, additionally, one thing that kind of surprised me is that samurai lifted heavy. I mean, like really heavy weights. Obviously, like most people kind of pictured all of the sword training, the martial arts, the mindset, the meditation, the strategy, the tactics, but I never really like pictured the samurai warrior as like sitting there just lifting something really heavy. But I was wrong, and that is one of the beautiful things about being a historical researcher, is discovering things you didn't know about. So for instance, the samurai liked to lift heavy, specifically heavy stones. The sport of stone lifting was very popular among samurai. And throughout all of Japan, you can go around, and many of these are protected national artifacts, but you can see what they call strength stones, or chirikashi, all throughout Japan. Some of these are engraved with names, with dates, with the names of people who lifted them, but they are all over Japan, thousands of them. And the oldest one that we know of is actually engraved with the name of the samurai who lifted it, dating back to the 11th century. Okay, so this is one of the oldest in Japan, and it was lifted by a samurai. So this sport was one of the very few that was practiced by both nobles like samurai all the way down to peasants. And it was very popular. And additionally, some of the peasants would do other stuff, like they had competitions lifting sake barrels or bags of rice. But the stone lifting was one of the very few sports in Japan that was practiced by all social classes, including the samurai. Now, perhaps less surprisingly is the fact that the samurai trained martial arts, specifically jiu-jitsu. Now, this is notable for one specific reason, and that is that the samurai were the only ones who trained grappling in the East Asian environment where they were surrounded by striking arts. For instance, on the mainland in China, and even just to the south on the island of Okinawa, their striking-based arts ruled. In China, you had Kung Fu. Down in Okinawa, you had karate, and this was generally the favored method of fighting at the time, with strikes, punches, and kicks. The samurai went a different way, and they developed the art of jiu-jitsu, which was grappling-based. Throws, strikes, joint locks, chokes. They found that this was much more effective on the battlefield, because on the battlefield, your opponents are wearing armor. And so trying to punch someone through their steel breastplate generally didn't make much of an impact on anything but your knuckle bones. Additionally, it wasn't a great idea to try to trade punches with sword and spear blows. So if you could get a hold of someone, drag them to the ground, make it a grappling exchange, make it dirty and close, that generally proved more effective in the heat of battle than striking arts. And the samurai became very good at this. They became jiu-jitsu experts and really established the art as we know it today, carrying that torch forward. And then eventually, in recent times, it spread to Brazil. And now Brazilian jiu-jitsu is one of the most popular sports and martial arts on the planet, and rapidly growing still. And really all of this can be traced back to the samurai. Now for diet, they ate very minimally, very sparing. Samurai ate only 2 meals per day, lots of fish, vegetables, and white rice being their main carbohydrate source, but even this was eaten in moderation, as rice was kind of seen, and rightfully so, as like the variable to body mass. Like if you wanted to trim down, you would eat less rice. If you wanted to bulk up, you would eat more rice. And so the samurai took this very serious in terms of moderating their food, and they believed that it was just like their mindset, something that should always be disciplined in its approach. Additionally, the samurai employed a practice of eating until they were only 80% full. Once they felt themselves reach that point of like, yeah, I'm comfortably full, I'm no longer hungry, I'm not stuffed, I'm not overflowing, but I'm no longer hungry, they would stop eating right there, and then that would be a meal. So practicing moderation was a big part of their philosophy, both in their diet and in their training, but also in day-to-day life, an equal balance of all these things. Contrary to modern people, when we kind of try to crush a task with like a home run or a single devastating blow, the samurai employed something called kaizen, which was basically the principle of the compounding effect of incremental daily gain. So it's like if you make 1 inch of progress every day over the course of 1 year, that adds up. And usually it adds up plus some extra on top of that. So they were very big on establishing a balanced protocol, what we would today call a training program, and slowly progressing instead of using some grand gesture to try to make progress. So overall, this recipe, really hard to argue with. It created some of the most effective and skilled warriors in history in the samurai of feudal Japan. And if you guys are interested in learning more about the samurai or in other warrior groups, you'll definitely want to check out my school group. I will link that below, but it is a community where me, my coaches, and anyone who wants to come hang out with us gets to come talk, gets to ask questions about training, gets to dive into ancient history, gets to present their own evidence, put their own finds out there, and we really just kind of hang out and talk, all of us. So if that's something that you are interested in, go check it out. We also offer plenty of exclusive training programs and free workouts on there, so be sure to check it out, and I will link that below. The rest of you guys, be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.